What's up everybody and welcome back. In this video I will show you how I built this nice wall decor frame. Now this was a very easy project with simple joinery and would be great for any beginner or DIYer. Also, this project didn't take very long to build, so maybe you could build it to sell it. Anyways, follow along, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy the video. Alright, let's get this party started. After returning from Home Depot, I began unloading my haul, which are these inexpensive 14-foot furring strips and a sheet of tempered hardboard. I chose hardboard because it's thin and very easy to paint, but you could choose any plywood you want. After unloading, I began going through the furring strips to get a good idea of where to cut these to avoid any defects like the knots and shaved off edges. Once I figured that out, I started working on the back support. I began at the miter saw, breaking down the boards to make up the four sides of the frame, and then ran each one through the table saw with the fence set at 3 inches. While doing this, try to remove any of the defects that you found during this step, as it will make the assembly process a lot easier later on. As you can see here, the last board I ripped down, the blade was set at 45 degrees so I could make a French cleat. This is how I will be hanging this frame on the wall, and you will have a better understanding of this later on. I also made a very in-depth video regarding French cleats, and I will leave a link for that at the end of this video. Now I needed to work on assembling the frame together. By doing this, I used the Craig pocket hole jig and drilled 2 holes in each end of the top and bottom piece of the frame. After clamping each piece to the workbench for a nice flush joint, I ran 2 screws into each joint. While doing this, you'll want your French cleat tip on the inside of the frame, not the outside. You may have noticed that I did not use any type of wood glue for these joints, as the screws will be plenty strong enough. After I finished the back frame, I ran the hardboard through the table saw with the fence set at 36 inches. After that, I needed to secure it to the back frame and did this by using construction adhesive. I ran a bead around the frame, and here is a good visual of the French cleat and the side that the glue should be applied to. Be careful not to screw this step up. If you do, you won't have a way to mount it to the wall later. After placing some wood scraps to elevate the sheet, I sat the sheet on top and lined everything up and started removing the scrap wood. Now I could have put a bunch of clamps around the edges, but I wanted to show you a more hands-on way of doing things. After pressing the edges down, I followed that up by shooting some brad nails so nothing shifts while the glue dries. Now I needed to make the face frame. I wanted mitered corners because they look better, so I set my saw to 45 degrees and began cutting these pieces down. At the beginning of the video, when I was looking for defects, these were the very best boards of the batch. I then took them to my workbench and repeated the same process of drilling the pocket holes on each end of the top and bottom pieces. Again, you want to take a quick glance at the boards and drill the pocket holes on the lesser appealing side. You also want to be careful where you drill these holes, because if you go too wide, you will drill into the edge of the board, which will be very ugly. After all of that, I screwed the frame together just like I did previously. If you are new to woodworking and would like to get into this hobby, a pocket hole jig would be a great investment. You can build almost anything with it, and it is very easy to use. If you are interested in the one that I have, I will leave a link for it in the video description below. Now that the face frame is finished, I dry fitted both frames together and laid out the banners I'll be using. To make decorative frames around each one, I ran some boards through the table saw with the fence set at 1.5 inches. After that, I needed to add a dado groove to each one. Even though I have a dado blade, I wanted to show you that any table saw can achieve this. So I lowered my saw blade to 1/8 of an inch and set the fence to 1 inch and ran each board through multiple times while bumping the fence wider for each pass. Now you can see the banners will fit nicely inside of the frame. Now it was time to start mitering these pieces to make each banner frame. So I used my digital angle finder so I know what setting to use on my miter saw. And if you don't have an angle finder, here is a template you can screenshot for yourself if you choose to use the same type of banners. After getting the miter saw set up for each angle, I began cutting out each piece while also being careful not to cut these on the wrong side of the dado. I then followed that up by checking the fit, and it all turned out perfect. I wanted to show you that I cut the hardboard in a way that it will be recessed inside of both of the wood frames. This makes for an easy assembly, and the edges will be covered with a decorative border. By recessing this cut, you could use a circular saw instead of a table saw when cutting the hardboard because it doesn't have to be a very accurate cut. To make this decorative border, I took my furring strips and stood them up at the miter saw and cut them at 45 degrees on each end. Now you can get a good look of how the project is turning out so far, and I think it's looking pretty good. Now that all the materials are cut to size, it's time to start adding some color. So I took all of my wood frame pieces back to the workbench. I first sanded down everything except the hardboard and then applied some stain and polyurethane. I started with the pre-stained wood conditioner, followed by the stain, and finished with a few coats of polyurethane. And I did all of these steps with a lint-free rag. And after that, I put a few coats of paint on the hardboard with a foam roller. Okay, so now that everything had dried, it was time to finish this thing up. So I applied the glue to the back of the face frame and placed it on top of the hardboard. Again, I used my hands-on approach to get a nice glue squeeze out and followed that up with my 23 gauge pen nailer. For the decorative border pieces, I needed to mark a line where to avoid gluing because this edge will be revealing. Be careful not to get too close to this line when applying the glue, as you need to leave room for the glue squeeze out. After setting all of these pieces into place and lining up all the mitered corners, I went around with my pen nailer to fasten them while the glue dries. Now it was time to start adding the banners. To secure the banners to the frame, I just used some double-sided carpet tape and placed 2 strips on each one, as this will be plenty strong enough to hold. After doing a little bit of math, I made these spacer pieces to center the banners nicely inside of the frame. This made things very easy, as I just set a couple of edges against those pieces and smoothed out the banner while pressing down on the carpet tape for a good fit. Now all of you sports fans out there may be wondering about the 2 banners in the center. I'm a loyal Auburn Tigers fan, and the rest of my family are Tennessee fans. I needed 4 banners for this project, and I figured I would just throw that one in. Anyways, I then laid out my decorative frames and went to town with my pen nailer securing each piece. For the excess of the nail sticking through the back side of the hardboard, I just bent them down the same as an office staple bends on a sheet of paper. A 23 gauge nail is about the same thickness as an office staple, but it doesn't really matter because you will never see these anyway. Okay, moving on. To mount this sucker to the wall, I needed to add a French cleat that would fit into the cleat that I installed on the frame. First, I marked the height I wanted and marked a line with my level. I then went along that line with a stud finder marking each wall stud. I finished that up by placing my cleat on the level line and drove a screw into each marked spot of where the wall studs are. Make sure when doing this, the sharp tip of the cleat is pointing up and facing you. Okay, now it is finally time to hang this work of art. You'll want to find someone to help you just like I did. I would never attempt to hang this by myself, and you shouldn't either. Work smart, not hard. After getting it hung, make sure you go back down the same way that you went up. Now it's time to stand back and take a look at the final product. This was a very easy but fun project to build. I'm sure you could knock one of these out in a weekend and maybe sell a few. I'll leave a link for all the tools and supplies I used in the video description. And if you want to learn more about French cleats, check out my video of my French cleat tool wall. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video, and the Bible verse for this video will be John 14:6 and 7. And this is while the disciples are questioning Jesus. And he replies to them by saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. If you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Thanks again for watching.